I am the Associate Chief Pharmacist here at King's College Hospital, and I'm also the Medicine Sustainability Lead. So that's why I am involved in this project, and I'm the project lead. So, to the next slide. There we go. So just getting past the housekeeping because Kate has already promised over that. But yeah, so the first slide is probably a slide that you've seen many times, especially if you joined sessions this week, but it's a really important slide. It's just talks about the situation in the NHS right now. Not very tech savvy, so apologies for that. But yeah, so basically this is the situation in the NHS at the minute. This slide is shared a lot in the Greener NHS and green plans throughout trusts. So one of the biggest contributions to NHS carbon footprint is anaesthetic gases and MDI inhalers, which I'm sure all of us know. So our trust has actually established two projects. So one is focusing on anaesthetic gases, which is this project I'm going to be talking about today, and one on inhalers as well. And yeah, so that contributes to 5% of the carbon emissions of the NHS. But situation at King's, so starting off as to why we actually decided to do this project. And a lot of you may already know this was started in Lothian by someone called Leitha Shakira, and she has really made this everyone's problem nationally, which is great, and she spread the word about all of this. So we've really used her methodology. But when we started looking at it, we wanted to see the situation in our own trust. So as you can see at King's, nitrous oxide is the biggest anaesthetic gas that we use, has the largest carbon footprint, and it was just over 18,000 tonnes for 2021 data. And that is the equivalent of driving 184 times around the world in an average size petrol car. We love that fact because it's crazy. So yeah, it's also got a long atmospheric lifetime, about 150 years, a really strong global warming potential, 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So yeah, we know it destroys the ozone layer, and we also know it's 7% human-induced climate change as well. So all these reasons made us know that we had to act. That's why we mainly focused on nitrous oxide and NOx, of course, as well for this project. So just to quickly talk about the quality improvement method as well. Obviously, this week's been organised by CQI and our CQI team at King's. We could not have done it without them. So just to tell how anyone's interested in starting this project, it's really good to have a systematic approach. So the define stage is the first stage, and that's when you sort of gather your aim, you gather your project together. And then the second stage is the describe stage. So it's when you collect data to understand the current situation. And then we generate ideas in the design stage. And then when we deliver these, we follow the PDSA cycle, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And then, of course, we have the digest stage, which is where hopefully all the improvement ideas that have worked are scaled and spread across the trust. So I'll be taking you through what we have done at King's, and you'll see throughout what I'm talking about how we've used all those methods. Okay, so the define stage, which was our first stage, we looked at how we can reduce nitrous oxide waste across King's College Hospital by 80%. So we took quite, I would say, like a figure where actually, like, we thought it was quite mild, really, to go for 80%, because having a look at Lithia's work and work that other people had done across the UK, people were looking around 95% waste. But obviously, starting out not really knowing a lot, we just went at 80%. And we'll come to see that actually it is a lot more than that, spoiler alert. But yeah, so we wanted to reduce our nitrous oxide carbon footprint. So you can see in the table there what our baseline was and what our target is now. And we also wanted to reduce our turnover of G-size cylinders. So those are the cylinders that go in the manifolds themselves. And improve our access to portable cylinders. So just making sure we have those readily available and that we can increase those for use, because we know that portable cylinders versus manifold cylinders, there's a lot more waste with the manifold. So the first challenge, I guess, was finding a project team. Although actually we're really lucky, we had some great people reach out and we've had a really, really great project team. But the thing is, everyone's busy, so it's finding a time that works best for everyone. Being really specific about your targets to get people on board, engage key stakeholders, and recommendations that we would recommend as well, which is on the screen, is that involving your board members. We're really lucky that we have great exec level interest in sustainability, but not everybody has that. So it's just making sure that you make it everybody's problem, essentially, because they have to care. So the next So the described stage is when we basically had to collect the data, had a look, and like I said, we all started. I had never seen a manifold. I didn't know what a manifold looked like. So to start out at this, we basically just went to the manifolds. We physically went there, we took pictures, we investigated logbooks, we looked at absolutely everything to figure out exactly what the problem was and what we could do about it. So we identified all the waste streams that were happening over time with our project team. So as you can see, we use the tin width strategy there, and we're just looking at all the different types of waste. So transport waste, personnel waste, timing waste, over ordering, over processing, all of those things tie into it. I think it's easy to look at a manifold and say, okay, we can see the problem, there's pipework and there's leaks, but you can decommission 3 of your 4 manifolds, but you're still over ordering. You're never going to reduce your wastage really. So yeah, this is a good method to follow, and this is also in Olivia's method, is just go to the manifolds, because I think that was one of the best things we did at the very start of this project. So the describe again stage, we basically were really lucky. We had really great anaesthetist support on board, and we did a clinical audit. So what we decided to do was use the anaesthetic machines that we had at the trust, and over a weekly period, figure out how much nitrous oxide was used in each of the areas that you can see in the graph. So our anaesthetic machines were able to record the last 3 procedures. So at the end of the day, the anaesthetist would go in and see if any of those procedures contained nitrous oxide. And if they did, they would write that down, and then we'd take that up over a week for each area, and then we extrapolated that up to a year. So we know there's some limitations with this data, but obviously we wanted to get the data quickly, and also that was the same method that other areas were using too. So as you can see, looks like a lot being piped into the manifold, but not a lot actually being clinically used, which I'm sure is the same in a lot of areas. So yearly, it was estimated that we used 83,460 litres of nitrous oxide, but actually being piped into the manifold, I think was the difference in figures was 915,000 litres. So basically like a huge amount of wastage. So with 92% of nitrous oxide available is not used clinically. So yeah, a stark reality. So then we had to look at the root causes of this problem. So we had our data, we knew what we needed to do, but we needed to figure out where do we start fixing this problem. So what are the main key issues? So we came up with this fishbone diagram. We had a really good meeting with the whole project team. We did like a 2-hour big meeting where we just thrashed everything out. And we came up with like 3 main root causes from everything we discussed. So there's a lack of robust procedures for managing stock. So how it works at King's at the minute is a milk bottle type round for our anesthetic gases. So what that means is if there's empties, BOC will collect them and then we'll replace what's empty. The problem there is that they weren't always taking back the empties, but they were replacing them. So we ended up having a huge amount of empties, but also lots of fill cylinders. Cylinders were expiring because there was poor stock rotation happening. Cylinders were found in areas all over the trust that maybe wouldn't shock you. So the problem was we just realised that the ordering really was something we needed to tackle early on. And also the lack of access to equipment as well, alternative equipment. So we had anaesthetists reaching out and saying, it's great, we want to help you and get on board with you, but actually what is the alternative? Because we don't have access to like TIVA machines at all sites. Some of the bigger sites have a lot, but some sites don't actually have that available. So it's figuring out what we can use instead and how we can support them in that. So then we had our driver diagram where we again just looked at the different stages of our CQI cycle and then figuring out our main solutions from there. So like I kind of said before, we had some really good solutions, but deciding what action we needed to take first. And we kind of wanted to do big bang approach. So essentially fix the biggest problem first that has like the biggest action, the biggest impact, that we can go back to people and say, look, we've done this. It's cost this much, it's saved this much money, it's saved this much gas, we've reduced our carbon impact by this much. So then that's how we came up with this idea. So the first idea was, let's just decommission the manifolds. We know that actually clinically we're not using very much. At the main site at King's, we have 5 manifolds. It's a very big site, and we just basically knew that actually we didn't need 5, and we knew that from the get-go, but we knew the best idea would be to start with something like this. So we made a plan to decommission, and we decided to start with our liver theatres manifold. So King's is a huge liver centre, and the liver theatres had their own manifold for nitrous oxide, which was just so inappropriate, because what we found when we did our tours and when we did our data collection is that basically all of the nitrous oxide on there was expiring and being wasted. So I think for the year we had put in 108,000 litres of nitrous oxide into that manifold, but actually majority of it was wasted and not clinically used. So when we did the audit, there was no clinical use in liver theatres whatsoever. So when we approached the clinical directors, the anaesthetists, everyone about this, they had no problem with it at all, because they were really on board with the idea of reducing carbon footprint, but also the fact that it wouldn't cause any clinical differences because it wasn't used. So we had a really good plan, and actually we have to say it went really well. These kind of things, you usually write it down and they maybe don't go to plan, but we actually nailed it to the exact week, which was crazy. But yeah, so basically we had great input, key stakeholders were really involved, and I think our main reflections on this are that how much our estates colleagues sort of had to do on this, which we knew would happen, but I think they were coming in out of hours, they were having problems like alarms going off. So that's a real recommendation for anyone who is decommissioning a manifold, is that they turned it off at the clinical area, and they turned it off at the manifold section. And ideally then when we were doing our trial period, that should be fine, because the pressure in the system should remain the same, so there shouldn't be any alarms going off. But of course we all know manifolds leak, we know the pipework was leaking, so there was gas leaking out, so the alarms were going off because the pressure was dropping too low. So it was quite a lot for them to deal with, and they were so fab with it all and happy to do it. But we kind of just decided that it wasn't needed, and no one noticed any difference, which is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to sort of do this without anyone noticing any difference whatsoever, and that was the feedback from the clinical and theatre staff. So leaner delivery process. So this is the other part of the project that we were focusing on. So obviously decommissioning manifolds, but the fact that, and like I said before, we could have decommissioned as many manifolds, but if we hadn't sorted out our delivery process, we'd still be way over ordering and over processing our cylinders. So this is a graph that we put together recently. So we're still working on this part of the project. But essentially what's happening is we've done an order freeze from BOC. So from all the manifolds across our site, we have frozen our G-size cylinder deliveries. So it's a bit scary when we went into it, because we were very much taking all of that into our own hands, which means that every Wednesday we have to go and physically to visit the manifolds as a team and see exactly what's happening. So we started this in September. I think it was around the start or middle of September. And since we started this project, the order freeze, we haven't ordered any G-size cylinders from BOC, which is crazy to think how much we were ordering. And you saw from the graph at the start, like how many thousands of litres of G-size cylinders we were ordering, yet in 2 months we haven't ordered any. And that just goes to show, with an efficient process, we can manage this. The logbooks in the manifold rooms being filled in, getting engagement of the porters as well, all those things is managed really well. So we found that the turnover of most manifolds is really low. I think we have ones that haven't been changed since April, ones that haven't been changed since June. They're changed so infrequently. And when they are changed, we just always make sure that we have enough for one change. So I will say that we know exactly how many are on the bank, so we make sure we have enough spare cylinders for one change. But we've been able to manage that no problem, still without ordering any. So we know eventually we're going to have to order some, of course, but we'll be able to manage that going forward. So we'll know that whatever manifold it is, we'll need, say, 5 cylinders, and that's the only amount they need at any one time. It'll make the process a lot more efficient. So alternative nitrous oxide supply. So back to kind of decommissioning side of things. Of course, we're here to reduce the waste of nitrous oxide. We obviously we're not here to say stop using it clinically. That's not our job, and that's something we always like to start every meeting with stakeholders with. We're not telling you to stop using it, and specifically for Entonox as well. It's not what we're here to do, but we always need to make sure that there's alternative supply if we're going to switch off manifolds. So we've had a few ideas in our project team and a few things that we're carrying out. So for the manifold that we did decommission, the liver theatres one, we have used flow adapters and trolleys. So how this works is that you can see in the picture on the very left hand side of the screen, that's a flow adapter. So that attaches into the back of an anaesthetic gas machine, and that will attach to a portable E-size cylinder. The E-size nitrous oxide cylinders are the same ones that you'll see people sort of carrying around the small oxygen cylinders. Those are the same sort of size. And they can be carried on the trolley, which you can also see in that photo. So they're brought in, attached to the back of the machine, and that's it really. They're used, they're on the ward. It can discreetly go behind the machine. It doesn't cause any impact really. I would like to say we've had like good feedback, but they haven't actually had to use it yet, which I think is also good. So that's what we're doing for liver theatres, because that's one area, so it's quite easy to do. It's really cost effective. All you're paying for is the flow adapter and the trolley. Most areas will still have the E-size cylinders, so we still have the E-size nitrous oxide cylinders available in the trust. And those can be stored at ward level, or they can be stored in a gas area, and the porters can take the cylinders up when staff need them. So we're looking into that idea for liver theatres, but obviously that won't work for all areas. So tracking our progress. So this is a statistical process control chart. So this is just tracking the data that we have used for our tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and based on the number of the G-size cylinders that we buy in each month. So we've only just started this in the last 30 days, and it's a bit frustrating that we can't get data more often, because if anyone gets the data from BOC for their own trust, they'll know it only comes monthly, and it sort of comes mid-month, so you're kind of a bit delayed. We have so much data pumping in now to this project, but we can only update this spreadsheet every month or so. But yeah, basically it's just to show that we can see like how many cylinders we're ordering less. When the BOC order freeze came in, obviously there's a drop, and obviously we'll be happy to share this data again with anyone who wants to see it in the next couple of months, and hopefully we'll just see a massive drop continue with no more ordering. So our next steps, so we'll continue tracking our PDSA, to continue with our cycle. We also were very successful in receiving a Healthier Futures Action Fund to continue our work. So anyone who applied for that, we had a lot of applications, and this was our successful one. So we're really happy. So we've given a grant from them. And as I was kind of saying before, we had the flow adapters and the trolleys, but I also just did want to mention for the end of this is that there are obviously other ways to convert anaesthetic machines and do things so that you don't have to use manifolds, but those can be quite costly. So converting our anaesthetic gas machines here, our trust, is looking it's going to be £1,500, £1,500, sorry, for each machine. So that will have to be done in some areas that have a lot of theatres, say, that have like 7 or 8, 9 theatres in one area, won't be able to share in the way that one static area will. So those will take things like converting anaesthetic gas machines, which are slightly more expensive. So we'll hope to do that with the money that we got. And also educating our staff and patients. So one of the big things is engaging our stakeholders, and we're trying to have meetings with them quite regularly. We send a 3-weekly anaesthetic gas waste reduction stakeholder update. If anyone would like to see that and be a part of it, you can sign up to that as well. And that just shares our ideas, our progress, and just things that are happening within our project. And then just some lessons learned, really. So things that we would like to share with other people, and of course reach out if you do have any other questions around it. But yeah, just basically things like Olivia's methodology is great to follow. Getting a really good project team, engaging your key stakeholders early, those kind of things. Really, I can't stress how important your team is in it all. As much as you might want to do it all yourself, you need a really good team around you to do it. And that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura. Please put your hand up if you've got a question, or put it into the chat and we'll take a look. I can see that Nicola's hand is up, so go ahead, Nicola.
Sorry, Katie, actually it's a legacy hand, so I apologise. I must have
No
pressed it by
worries.
accident. I apologise.
No
Feel free
problem
to
at
go to
all.
someone else. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone who's joined us? I can see some in the chat, so I can go to those as well. Let me have a look. Some really interesting comments from Imran in the chat. Definitely be in touch with you, Imran. Nicola, please go ahead, Nicola Bird.
Yeah, hi, it's Nikki. I'm a pharmacist, but I'm also the lead for medical gases at Nottingham University Hospitals Trust. Thank you ever so much for that update. It was really useful. Just a couple of acronyms really that confused me. You know, you talked about the Tim Woods exercise. Can you elaborate a bit on what that is?
Yeah, sure. I can scroll back to that. The slide. This one, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is an acronym that's used when defining and describing like waste reduction. I think Katie might be able to jump in and also mention some things about this, but yeah, so it's the definition of the 7 wastes essentially. So when we were looking, obviously this project is waste reduction. So when we were looking into it, we knew we had to define our waste, and we very quickly realized that it's not just the fact that you have a manifold with old rubbish pipework with gas leaking out of it. There's so many things around that. So you've obviously got porter's time being wasted on manifolds that aren't even needed. Things expiring, over ordering, so it's a waste of money. You know, you've got big heavy goods vehicles coming onto site delivering gas that actually isn't needed as regularly as it is, so it's like more carbon footprint throughout the trust. So yeah, we're just looking at all the waste together and figuring out, not just tackling one side of it, but trying to tackle all of it.
Okay, thanks. It's just something I hadn't heard of. And then I'm going to ask a really basic question, because it's something I've really struggled with, is that, and again, you'll probably all laugh at me, but how do you actually work out what your baseline carbon dioxide emissions are for your nitrous oxide use? Is there some lovely equation algorithm somewhere, or are you just taking your data off the because I know if you go onto the futures dashboard, it puts your usage there at trust level 2, but I'm just struggling to actually get a concrete figure for then to sort of then look at how much can we reduce that by.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's not always super easy. Yeah, the greener NHS future dashboards are good, but they're quite delayed in their data. So we actually started our own dashboard to get the data through quicker. But yeah, so there is like really good calculations which we can share with you. There's also the anesthetic. There's an anesthetic it's a website for anaesthetists basically, and I can't remember the name of it now, but they have really good calculations and tables, and they give you like carbon conversions, and they essentially explain it all. And they also have like different providers, so if you're with BOC, if you're with a different provider, they'll also convert things depending on the size of the cylinder, that kind of thing. So they have basically worked it out for you, so I would recommend looking there. We can either put it in the chat or I can send it to you afterwards.
Oh, that'd be great. Lovely. Thank you ever so much for that. Cheers.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. And I can see a hand up from Catherine. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Catherine Middleton from Sustainability Manager at East of England Ambulance Service. Brilliant, great presentation, and it's interesting to see, because I went to the webinar the other day about the sort of similar levels of wastage within hospitals, particularly with the manifold. So that's quite interesting. But I'm going to sort of speak from an ambulance service perspective, so it might be a little bit different. But we do use BOC. So I was wondering, we're very early stages with identifying our usage on our ambulances, but also sort of that early stage of getting information from BOC. How easy did you find it, particularly when you sort of changed your ordering? How easy was that to say, well, no, we no longer want that size cylinder anymore?
Yeah,
for example.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, so with BOC, you can actually get data. I'm not sure if this is something you guys already do, but they actually can send you out your consumption data monthly. So you can sign up to that. If you have a BOC rep, just speak to them So we get our data just emailed over monthly, and then we use that as part of our, we know that that's what we're plugging into the manifolds, but obviously that's not the clinical use. So it's good to see that and then do the clinical audit to see the disparity. But in terms of like support from BOC, they were really on board at this. This is going to sound, I'm going to say at the start, but I feel like they were really keen to help. You know, we were talking to them so much at the start because we had so many questions about, like, you know, how would we do that? And, you know, what's a G-site cylinder and how much gas does that contain? And then obviously we became more knowledgeable and we brought up this order freeze, and I'm not going to lie, they did ignore us for a little while. I think they weren't really on board with that. But we finally sort of nailed them down to it, and like it's been fine. It's worked so far, but I'm not sure how chuffed they'll be. We'll be ordering less cylinders, but I mean, from their point of view, they always promote the fact that they're very interested in sustainability and helping us. So I understand they're a business, so they have to focus on that side of things. So they have been fairly supportive. I think when the questions are on something businessy or ordering of more cylinders or different size cylinders, they're very keen to engage. But when you talk about reducing ordering, they might take a step back and not be as engaging, but persist, because they will get back and they will do it. They have been fairly good.
Cool. Okay. And I have a second question. It's more for if there's any colleagues from national or regional teams. So as I say, we're an ambulance service, so we're very different, but we do have significant amounts of, we've got 6 months worth of data from Box so far, and it's looking really significant for our emissions. So it would be useful if there's central guidance for ambulance services, because we're very different from acute hospitals, because obviously generally the Entonox is self-administered by the patient, so it's very different from ones where there's an anaesthetic gas machine. So if there is information available for ambulance services and others where the Entonox is used in that way, or other obviously nitrous oxide equivalents, it would be really useful. Happy to hear anything about that.
Brilliant, thank you everyone. I can see that there's quite a lot of conversation going. I'm trying to answer some questions in the chat as well for anyone that might have quality improvement sort of questions around this. I think we are 2 minutes over, so I'm going to close the session now today. The only thing that's left for me to say is obviously a massive thank you for attending, and a massive thank you to Laura for this presentation and for sharing the work that's been done at King's.